So again, I just want to say good morning and thank everyone for being on this call. Um, as you know from the email or from other experience, this is the Child Nutrition Outreach Program. We are a program within Project Bread, but we are fully funded by the state through the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So we are kind of an outreach arm for school breakfast and summer meals. And so as part of that, we try to do everything we can to encourage participation in both those programs by helping out schools, sites, and sponsors. So the Summer Food Service Program is a federally funded program. And because of that, we have certain eligibility requirements. I'll get into that briefly, but if anybody has specific questions about their WIC office being eligible, please email me after the call and I can let you know if your site does fall into an eligibility area. But the WIC program requirements are very similar to some of the requirements for summer food service programs, so it makes it a really great match that your client population overlaps with the type of population that the program is designed to target. So that's why we're very excited to see that some WIC offices across the country and 3 right here in Massachusetts participated in the program last summer. So want to give you guys an idea of the program today. So I'll continue a little bit more of an introduction, but I'm going to keep that brief. Then we'll briefly go over some of the best practices we found at sites last summer. Then we'll go into case studies. I'm prepared to talk about the 3 sites we had last summer, but again, I'll unmute the call at that point. So if anybody from Quincy, East Boston, or Worcester are on the call and willing to share just briefly about your experience, how the program went for you, I think that would be of great interest to everyone. Then I'll share a few next steps of what you need to do if you are interested in the program, or if you're interested in the program, but for some reason think your WIC office is not a match for a site, there are still some great ways you can support the program. And then, like I said, we're going to open it up for questions. I'm hoping there's plenty of time for that. So feel free to use that chat box to ask questions throughout, and we'll address them at the end. Or I'll unmute everyone at that point, and you can ask your questions. So first, I wanted to just show this map. The green dots on this map are the 3 sites we had last summer. So all the yellow are where WIC offices are located and are eligible to participate in the program. And I'm also learning during this process, so I'm learning that you have some main offices and some smaller satellite offices. I listed all of those because geographically that's what we're looking for with the program. But when we talk one-on-one or even at the end of this call, we can talk more specifics, whether if your site actually will work. But the program has a lot of flexibility, so I really encourage you to explore the option if you're interested. So to share a few of the best practices we found last summer, first let me share a little bit more how the program works. So as Project Bread, we support the program through technical assistance. So we really help with the outreach. We have a lot of free materials and experience with how to get people at sites. And then we also work with the sites and sponsors to be set up for success. So sponsors are the ones who are really running the program within your local community. They're the ones doing the paperwork. They're either making the meals and delivering them, or they're working with a vendor to procure those meals for sites. Sites are the geographic spot where those meals are being served. So the site, it depends on your sponsor. You may have a lot of responsibilities of doing that site, or you may just need to host some staff people in the meals. So in the best scenario for you, the sponsor is going to be able to send a few staff people and handle all the logistics. But I want to be realistic and prepare you for the possibility that if you're interested in the program, having staff on your end is going to make it a lot smoother and easier, and in some cases is going to be necessary. So one of the best practices is just that staffing really matters. Even if a sponsor has staff, the more people who can be part of the site, the better, because that way you can engage the kids and families a lot better. You can do some programming. So beyond the meal, they can get some sort of enrichment during the summer. You can do some outreach. So if you're in a very public spot, you can talk to families that are walking by, even if they're not necessarily part of your WIC population. You can still encourage them to join the meal site. On top of that, we found that unfortunately with this program and a lot of child nutrition programs, there's a lot of stigma around teens eating the food. They think that it's only for little kids, or they just think that that's a little too much like charity or something that's uncool for them to be doing. But by having teen staff, you have a great program for a teen to experience a child nutrition program, but also it helps get other teens interested in being part of a program. And at the very least, the teens that are staffing the site are ones who are going to be able to eat. So we find that having teens present in some way, either by them doing programming or being your site supervisor, it really helps to get other teens at your site. Signage is a little less important at a WIC office, but if you do have a WIC office that's in a very public location or you're able to eat outside, signage is fantastic in order to drive other community members to your meal site. And it also helps your patients throughout the preceding weeks, or if they're coming to an appointment on a day where you don't have a meal, to inform them that a meal is being served at your WIC office. Programming, I talked about that briefly with staffing. We've found that unfortunately, even though people need this meal, that meals are not a driver enough for them to come to a meal site. So by having programming, you have something that adds a little bit of excitement and a little bit more engagement with the population. But also programming is a great way to enforce this congregate feeding rule. So one of the few rules that are kind of very set in stone with a program is that kids need to be eating at a set location. Sometimes there's flexibility within that. If you list your entire address as the location, then some sites are able to have some outdoor space and indoor space. But the idea is for them not to take the meals off site, and that protects the sponsor from a few liability concerns and also ensures that the program is maintained by being able to ensure that kids are eating the food and not older siblings that are above the age of 18 or their parents. So the USDA has set this congregate feeding rule that that kids have to eat on site. So by having programming, you have some other way to engage them and keep them interested. And so it's more of a exciting reason to stay there rather than just saying you have to eat here. So we find programming to be really wonderful. And at a WIC office, I know it's a little tricky. You have less staff and probably less capacity to really have like a robust program that like a summer camp may have. But at some of the WIC offices, like at Quincy WIC, they were handing out materials about My Plate and just sharing briefly about My Plate and about eating diverse foods and prioritizing certain foods on your plate. So programming, think very broadly. It could be a very simple thing that takes a few minutes to explain or a few minutes of engagement, but it makes people feel that sure, they're getting a meal that they really want and need, but they're also getting another benefit above and beyond that meal. Choosing the right location. In many cases, I'm experiencing that WIC offices, you may only have one or two places that this would work. But I really encourage you to think if there's any green space or parking lot that you can use a part of it, to think about outdoor space. Outdoor space is great for a number of reasons. The best logistic one is just that you don't have to worry about a mess inside a waiting room or community room. But also an outdoor space is fantastic because if you have any foot traffic or even cars passing by, they can see the program and experience it. And even if they don't stop in that day, it kind of broadcasts that message to the community that there is a summer meal site, there is an opportunity for kids and teens to eat during the summer at your WIC office. So again, if you have outdoor space, I think that's the best option. If you can work with partners, some of the sites. And I know East Boston WIC had a tent set up outside. I think that was in partnership with their health center that hosts a farmers market, so they had some of those resources. But by having a tent outside, you have a shady spot. You can set up tables and chairs. So again, it makes that congregate feeding rule easier to enforce, and it also broadcasts the community service you're providing. Meal times. So the program does have, like I said, some really steadfast rules, but it does have a lot of flexibility as well. So meal times, there's a few things for you to consider. One is that you don't have to serve 5 days a week. In fact, the WIC offices we had last summer, 2 of them only served 1 day a week, and the third served 2 days a week. So in the ideal scenario, you would serve 5 days a week or 6 or 7, just to have that consistency in the community. But if you can only handle 1 day a week or want to pilot this summer with 1 day a week, that's totally fine. And we still encourage that, because even if you're only serving a handful of meals and you're only doing it 1 day a week, that's still important to those families. The other part of meal times is that you can have a really short window. And so in that case, if you have limited staff, you could have your meal time over just half an hour, for example. Or if you have the staffing, you can extend one meal over 3 or 4 hours, so people could drop in at any time during that window and receive a meal. So we encourage for you to have that large window, because you can impact more people, especially at a place like a WIC office where a lot of families are coming just when their appointment is. So that way you have more of your appointments adjacent to the meal time. But again, think about that flexibility, think about what works for you. And also with meal times, you can serve up to 2 meals. So you can serve breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snacks. You can't do lunch and dinner together, but if your WIC office is open, like let's say business hours 9 to 5, if you have the staffing or your sponsor is able to work with you on staffing, then you can even consider doing breakfast and lunch. And that way you can impact more people over a greater period of time. So meal times is a best practice in some ways, but also just something to keep in mind about how it can work at your office. Then if you do choose to do the program, the important thing, especially in the first year and especially for a newer type of site like a WIC office, is to really think about communications and outreach. We encourage a number of different things. We have a lot of our sites and sponsors do something called a Blitz Day, where they get some volunteers together and they knock on the doors in the immediate neighborhood or talk to businesses nearby. They hang out posters just to make sure the word gets out. This is something you can also, when you connect with a sponsor, talk to them about what they already do. A lot of them already send out messages through the schools at the end of the year, or post bulletins in newspapers, or in some communities even do radio ads. So since you'll be a brand new site, really working with them to ask them, please encourage people to come to our WIC office so we can have a great first summer and start a trend for the following years. In the context of WIC offices, East Boston WIC had a really successful summer by using text messaging. On Tuesday, they had their meal sites on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So every Tuesday and Wednesday, they sent out a message to their entire client population. And informally throughout the summer, they did ask their clients, was this excessive? Do we burden you with too many text messages? And they got a pretty resolute no, that it was a positive thing. People were happy to hear about the meal site, and the constant reminder was helpful. And because of that, they had quite a bit of people at their site, which I'll talk about in a minute. But if you feel comfortable, I know all the WIC offices have that text messaging service. So I find that to be pretty successful, since it is a very client and appointment-based service at WIC. By broadcasting it throughout the summer, then you can get as many people to attend, even if they don't have an appointment that day. Then the Summer Eats app is something that we also launched last summer, and we really encourage folks to think about using it. It's a meal finder that you can download on an iPhone or Android. And that way, when you pull it up, it will show you the nearest sites to you, or you can type in an address and find the nearest sites at that spot. And so even if your WIC office does not end up serving meals, the Summer Eats app is a great resource to share with your clients. And also, if you do end up having a meal site but only do it 1 or 2 days a week, like the WIC sites from last summer, then you can say, here's a meal. We really encourage you to look up the sites in throughout the community for the other days of the week. Your sponsor, and also at CNOP, we have downloadable site lists, so you can also download the sites in your community. But by having that app, people have a lot more flexibility, and it's right there on their phone. So it's a really great tool that we had some success with, and we hope will be used a lot more this summer. And then finally, we found that cross-promoting programs is great. So again, getting people to think about multiple ways that they can benefit from the WIC office, or let's say a farmer's market. So we were noticing that WIC offices, and I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do, but pass out vouchers for farmers markets at the beginning of the summer. So that's an opportunity for you to promote the farmers market if they have a meal site, or to say, you can use this at the farmers market, but also if you need additional meals, feel free to come to the WIC on Wednesdays or whenever your meal site is. So really thinking creatively about all the different services that your client population might be using, and finding ways to include the summer food service program in those promotions. So this is the point where I'd like to share the case studies from last summer, but I think it would be a lot more beneficial for everyone to hear from those offices. So I'm going to hit unmute. And if anybody here is from the East Boston WIC, Quincy WIC, or Worcester, and feels like sharing their experience from last summer, I would love to hear it.
Well, East Boston is here on the call. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Well, I think everything you said was sort of accurate about East Boston. We had a positive experience. We're looking forward to doing it again this year, and just really recruiting volunteers so that we're able to be consistent with that.
Great. And did you find...
If anybody has specific questions for us, we're welcome to answer them.
Great. So we will have that time for questions at the end. I really appreciate East Boston being here. I'm going to share some of the numbers from last summer from our sites, and in the meantime, if anybody from Quincy or Worcester are here, then you can, if you want to share, think about what you want to say. But just to reinforce what was just shared, just by the numbers themselves, at East Boston, there was an average throughout the summer of 66 kids a day, which is even on the high end of our more traditional sites. So that was a fantastic first year. And over the entire summer, there's 859 meals served. So it's hard to know if that was all unique kids or if there were some repeat. And I was able to visit East Boston. I know there were a few repeats. So that's great in itself, because people are coming repeatedly to get a meal. And just wanted to reiterate that, like, 66 a day, that's 66 families that may have not been able to provide lunch to their children otherwise. So we were pretty excited to see that at East Boston. And again, as people are thinking, in Worcester we had 45 a day, so that was also quite fantastic for our first summer. And then for Quincy, there was on average 7 a day. And like I was saying, for East Boston, 7 sounds small, but I think that's pretty exciting, because if you think about it, well, if you, I wish I had a picture of the Quincy office, but the office is very small. The waiting room is small, but they were still stepped up and said that they wanted to provide the service to their community, and I'm sure that made a big impact to those families. So that's an example of, even if you think you're going to have a small program and it's only going to impact 5 to 10 kids a day, I still encourage you to do it. We can see if your sponsor is interested in delivering, and if so, then that's still a great positive to your community. Okay. Well, if we do get if one of the Worcester or Quincy folks join us later, then they can share their remarks during the question time. So I just wanted to add to the wonderful additions from East Boston WIC, just to again reinforce that they had a tent outside, which was a great benefit. As you can kind of see in this picture, there's a busy road behind the sign, and then a somewhat busy road, kind of where you would be standing to take this picture. So you had some foot traffic and some car traffic who were able to notice this banner and notice people receiving meals. And then with that tent outside, they had an option for people to sit outside, especially if it was a nice day. But then also they have a larger waiting room, so they had a benefit there. They were able to have people sitting inside as well. So whatever the weather was or people's preference, you had both options. So that was kind of an ideal situation. And if you have a WIC office like that, I encourage everyone to consider being a summer meal site. But additionally, if you have that type of setup, and I think you have a fantastic space for the meals. Unfortunately, I didn't have pictures of Quincy or Worcester, but I know Worcester had a similar setup. I think mostly inside, and Quincy has very little outdoor space except for a small parking lot. So they were inside in the waiting room. But one cool thing they did there was that they took out some of the adult furniture and bought some really cheap, but still kid-friendly, smaller furniture, and had like music playing for kids. So they still made their waiting room into a very cozy atmosphere for a meal site. So if you're thinking you have a small office, you don't have a lot of space for this, there's still a lot of creative ways to make it a very inviting atmosphere for the meal site. So hopefully next year we'll have a lot more case studies to share, but wanted to at least share a few of the exciting places from last summer. And for anybody on the call from those free sites, thank you again for being part of our program and for being some of the trendsetters. And I'm excited to hear about all of you are considering being back this summer. So for the rest of you who are interested in the program, here's a few next steps. The big thing is to keep in mind that a lot of this changes sponsor by sponsor. There are some state rules, there are some USDA rules, but the sponsor does run the program in the local community. So the first thing is really to contact CNOP. There's my email address, or you can email cnop@projectbread.org. And so we will help you talk through some of the details of your particular location and then connect you to your sponsor who will then help you with being trained and also some of the local logistics in your community. But in the meantime, as we're kind of walking through those steps, some things that we'll talk to you about is all these various steps. So staffing, like I said, in an ideal situation, your sponsor may have volunteers or staff that they can use. But these are often school nutrition directors who have less staff in the summer, or in some cases, like it might be a church group or another nonprofit that has very limited staff. So think through who you could use in staffing situations. One strong best practice that we found is cross-training your staff, even if they're not going to be dedicated to the meal program, by having, for example, all your reception staff or even your entire staff trained in the summer meal program. They're able to step in or ensure that the rules are being enforced, even if they are normally busy with their day-to-day tasks during that time. The other thing is to think about those meal times, like I discussed before. If you want to serve just lunch, or if your sponsor serves multiple meals, if you want to do breakfast and lunch, if you want to have a short window because you have limited staffing, or a long window so you can maximize how many people can access your meal site. Meal storage. If the sponsor is able to deliver right before the meal, in most cases, the coolers that your meals are stored in are sufficient. But if it's going to be a longer time, or if in any reason your sponsor needs to deliver the night before, you will need to consider a fridge to keep those meals at a safe temperature. So in most cases, a fridge is not going to be necessary. But if you are able to have a dedicated fridge for the summer, that is a big benefit. Again, that's something that some sponsors are able to provide or help you figure out those logistics. But just as you're brainstorming, that is something that may become necessary. And if you are doing it multiple days a week, the other benefit there is in some communities with your sponsor, you are able to use those leftover meals to reduce some of the waste. So if that's the case, then you will have to be able to store them safely overnight. So I add considering meal storage as a real consideration. But if you're thinking we don't have a fridge or we have limited fridge space, there are ways to work with your sponsor on that. So don't let that be a barrier, but definitely consider that as you're brainstorming about this program. Again, with meal location, just think through where you can host that meal. If you have outdoor space, how you can make it work. If you have various community rooms inside, how you can find the best one and make it a cozy meal site. If you only have a small waiting room, how to maximize that waiting room for a meal site. Programming, again, programming can be very wide. You can think about it as very interactive, work with a community partner to have, like, let's say I have a library come do a reading, like a storytelling during your meal time, or you can keep it very simple, have some music playing, have some toys out, have any resources where you can make it fun and interactive, like talking about My Plate in a fun way, like they did in Quincy. You can do any number of things to make it more engaging and have people more excited to come back and also to stay there during your meal time. Um, Again, just you don't have to think about that all ahead of time, but just something to start thinking about, as well as allies and partners. So this is where you can maybe find some of your volunteers if you are limited on staff, which I know most of us are, or other partners who can provide those programming or other resources. Like if you need a tent outside and you don't have it in your budget, sometimes the city government can loan one if they have those resources, or other community groups who maybe only use those tents on weekends. They can loan it to you during the week. And then we can't stress enough outreach. That's where we come in. We can help you a lot with free materials, with posters, with flyers, with door hangers. So you can put door hangers on houses in the community. But outreach is where you're going to uh, get really a lot of attention in the community to come to your site that summer. Um, I don't think a lot of people think of getting a meal at a lot of these types of sites, especially a WIC office, since it's newer across the nation and pretty new here in Massachusetts. They definitely come to WIC offices for nutrition information, so we think it's a natural pairing, but making sure that the community knows that WIC is also a resource in that particular community for meals during the summer. And I think it's important every summer, but especially this first one to get that message out there. Then finally, as I said at the beginning, as we're doing all this brainstorming, at some point we'll connect you with your sponsor, and your sponsor will help you walk through what it will look like in your local community and any sort of um, additional services they can provide, any other support, and they will also train you. So again, that's where you can think about how many of your staff are able to attend the training, or if you want to appoint a few people and have them come back and train the rest of the staff. Going to that training is going to answer a lot of the more health, like food safety considerations you may have and need to consider in your community. And then finally, going back to the first step, please stay in touch with us. We do provide technical assistance, and a lot of that is around outreach, but we do work closely with a lot of sites and sponsors and with the state agency. So if you have any concerns or problems, our team has been in existence for over 20 years. So we have a lot of learned experience and happy to kind of troubleshoot anything that comes your way. So the main thing to take away from this is that between your sponsor and us, you're not going to be doing this alone. You'll have support. So definitely feel free to call or email us anytime you have any questions, and we'll do what we can to help make your site successful. And I just wanted to touch upon briefly, if you can't be a site, there's still ways to support the program. I tried to gear this a little bit towards WIC. So if you're not able to host a site at your WIC office, definitely consider promoting other nearby sites. I know some WIC offices already do this, so we really appreciate that. But you can order materials for our website. Part of our state contract is that we will send these materials to anyone in the state free of charge. So you can order just as many as you'd like. If you want 100 posters, you can order 100 posters, but if you want just one or two, we'll send it your way. So log onto our website and you can find all those resources you can either print or we can send to you. You can also on our site, closer to the summer, we'll have site lists where you can print the sites for your community. You can also use our website to find sites on an interactive map, similar to our Summer Eats app. So you can also use that to promote clients finding sites nearby them. So even if they're driving from a little further away, they can find sites closer to home. And we have a bookmark that really gears towards the Summer Eats app. So that's another resource you can order from us and easily provide to all your clients, or any tabling opportunities you have in your neighborhood. You can take along and share the Summer Eats app with them. And then also, if you can't be a site, you can still help some of the other nearby sites. As I said, for WIC offices, we're always encouraging programming and working with partners, and it works in the opposite direction as well. So if you are looking to do other outreach to promote WIC to families, you can do that while also providing, for example, nutrition education at a nearby site. So if a park has a meal site and looking for something for kids and their parents to learn about, use your expertise and offer some programming to them, and that's hopefully going to drive more eligible people to your WIC office to access your wonderful services. And I'm sure you can think of more creative ways to use your expertise in nearby sites, but I just was throwing out one possibility, and I'd be curious to hear other ideas so we can share that with WIC offices in the future. So there's my contact information. That's my direct line. I did send out this PowerPoint, and I'm happy to send it again at the end of this week. So don't feel the need to write that down. But definitely, if you have any questions, you don't need to commit right now. So emailing me will not commit you, but I'm happy to answer questions, troubleshoot, come out to your WIC office and talk through how the program can work, and we can go from there. And now I'd love to open it up for any questions that people have, or even if you just have ideas or thoughts you want to share, please let me know. I don't think we heard the announcement that everyone is unmuted, but you should be unmuted. And there's also that kind of speech bubble that you can click on, and it will open up a chat box. You can type in your questions there if your microphone's not working or you prefer to do so. Anybody have any questions? Anybody considering doing the program this summer?
Hello. I'm not sure if you can hear me. This is Berkshire South WIC.
Okay, well, if anybody has questions, I'll put my email and phone number back up on the screen. Feel free to reach out. I'm going to translate your silence as folks being excited and brainstorming about the program.
Leran, can you hear me?
Again, I know I just said this about a dozen times, but we're here to help. So get in touch if at all you have questions about promoting the program or hosting a site. and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you so much for being on the call. Thanks for doing what you do for child nutrition, and thanks for your interest in the program.
You're concerned about what's going on?
Well, I'll email him, just so he knows that we're